When Rachel Parker left for university, she had been eager to escape the suffocating small town of Ashford and her family's peculiar traditions. Waverly House, her ancestral home, had always felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. The imposing Victorian mansion, surrounded by dense woods and an eerie silence, had an unsettling aura that Rachel couldn't wait to leave behind. Years later, with a degree in hand and dreams of a bright future, Rachel returned to Ashford. Her grandmother had passed away, and the family was gathering for the funeral. She hadn't seen her family in years and was filled with a mix of anticipation and dread. Waverly House loomed larger than Rachel remembered. Its once grand facade was now marred by neglect. The windows, like hollow eyes, stared blankly into the dense woods that encircled the estate. As Rachel stepped out of her car, a shiver ran down her spine. The air was thick with an unnatural chill, and the setting sun cast long shadows that seemed to reach out to her. Her parents, James and Lydia Parker, greeted her warmly, but with a hint of nervousness. Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As they walked into the house, she was struck by how little had changed. The same antique furniture, the same faded wallpaper, and the same sense of foreboding. That evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Rachel noticed the tension in the air. Her uncles, aunts, and cousins seemed subdued, speaking in hushed tones and avoiding eye contact. Her younger cousin, Emily, clung to her mother, eyes wide with fear. After dinner, Rachel's father led her to the old study, a room she had always been forbidden to enter as a child. The walls were lined with dusty books, and a large oak desk dominated the center of the room. James motioned for Rachel to sit, his expression grave. "Rachel," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "there's something you need to know about our family, something we've kept hidden for generations." Rachel felt a knot form in her stomach. "What is it, Dad?" James took a deep breath. "Our family is cursed. It all started centuries ago when our ancestor, Jonathan Waverly, made a pact with a dark entity. In exchange for wealth, power, and prosperity, a member of our family must be sacrificed every decade. The sacrifice ensures that our bloodline thrives." Rachel's heart pounded in her chest. "This is insane," she whispered. "You're telling me that our family has been murdering people for generations?" James nodded slowly. "Yes, and there's more. The next sacrifice, it's you, Rachel." Rachel's world spun. "Me? Why me?" "Because the curse demands it," James said, his eyes filled with sorrow. "The entity has chosen you." Rachel stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "This can't be real. It has to be some sick joke." But deep down, she knew her father was telling the truth. The strange occurrences, the whispered conversations, the fear in Emily's eyes, it all made sense now. Rachel spent a sleepless night in her childhood bedroom, her mind racing. She had to find a way to break the curse and save herself. But how? She had no knowledge of dark magic or ancient rituals. She felt lost and helpless. The next morning, Rachel decided to confront her family. She demanded to know everything about the curse, the rituals, and the entity they served. Reluctantly, her parents and relatives revealed the dark secrets of their ancestry. They showed her ancient texts, grimoires filled with forbidden knowledge, and journals of past family members who had tried and failed to escape the curse. Rachel learned that the entity, known only as the Shadow, demanded a blood sacrifice every 10 years. The chosen family member would be taken to the altar in the woods behind Waverly House, where the ritual would be performed. The sacrifice had to be willing, or the curse would consume the entire family. Desperate, Rachel searched for a way to break the curse. She spent days poring over the ancient texts, hoping to find a loophole or a counter-ritual. She discovered that Jonathan Waverly had been a powerful warlock who had summoned the Shadow and bound it to his bloodline. The curse could only be broken by undoing the original pact, but the texts were unclear on how to achieve this. As the days passed, the tension in the house grew unbearable. Rachel's family watched her with a mix of pity and fear, knowing that her time was running out. Emily, sensing the impending danger, clung to Rachel, refusing to let her out of sight. One night, as Rachel sat alone in the study, she felt a presence behind her. Turning, she saw her grandmother's ghostly figure, pale and translucent, standing in the doorway. "Grandmother," Rachel whispered, her voice trembling. The ghost nodded. "Yes, my dear, I have come to help you." Rachel felt a glimmer of hope. "Can you break the curse?" Her grandmother shook her head. "I cannot, but I can show you the way." The ghost led Rachel to a hidden compartment in the study, revealing an ancient book bound in black leather. "This grimoire contains the knowledge you seek, but be warned, the path to breaking the curse is fraught with danger." Rachel took the book, feeling its dark energy pulse through her fingers. She spent the next several days deciphering the cryptic text, learning of powerful spells and rituals that could sever the bond between her family and the shadow. Finally, Rachel found the ritual she needed. It required a confrontation with the shadow at the altar in the woods. She would have to summon the entity and challenge it, risking her life in the process. The ritual demanded immense courage and strength, qualities Rachel wasn't sure she possessed. On the night of the ritual, Rachel steeled herself for the confrontation. She dressed in a white gown, symbolizing purity and innocence, and carried the grimoire to the altar. Her family followed, watching from a distance with bated breath. The woods were eerily silent as Rachel began the incantation. The air grew cold, and a thick fog enveloped the clearing. Shadows danced around her, whispering in a language she couldn't understand. As she finished the incantation, the shadow emerged from the darkness, a towering figure shrouded in black. "Why have you summoned me, child?" The shadow's voice echoed, sending chills down Rachel's spine. "I have come to break the curse," Rachel said, her voice steady despite her fear. "I will no longer allow my family to be bound by your darkness." The shadow laughed, a sound that reverberated through the trees. "You are brave, but foolish. The pact cannot be broken." Rachel stepped forward, holding the grimoire tightly. "I challenge you, shadow, release my family from this curse, or face the consequences." The shadow's eyes glowed red, and it moved closer, its presence suffocating. "Very well, child, if you wish to break the pact, you must prove your worth." With a wave of its hand, the shadow summoned spectral figures from the darkness. The ghosts of past sacrifices, bound to the entity's will, surrounded Rachel. Their hollow eyes stared at her, their mouths whispering her name. Rachel's heart pounded in her chest, but she refused to back down. She began the counter-ritual, chanting the ancient words she had learned from the grimoire. The ghosts writhed and screamed, their forms flickering as if caught in a storm. The shadow roared in anger, lashing out at Rachel with tendrils of darkness. Pain seared through her body, but she continued the chant, focusing all her energy on the ritual. The air crackled with power, and the ground trembled beneath her feet. As Rachel reached the final incantation, a blinding light erupted from the altar, engulfing the shadow and the spectral figures. The entity's screams echoed through the woods, a sound of pure agony and rage. Rachel felt herself being lifted off the ground, her body consumed by the light. When the light faded, Rachel collapsed to the ground, exhausted and trembling. The shadow was gone, its presence erased from the clearing. The ghosts had vanished, their souls finally freed from the entity's grasp. Rachel's family rushed to her side, their faces filled with awe and relief. James knelt beside her, tears streaming down his face. "You did it, Rachel. You broke the curse." Rachel managed a weak smile. "It's over, Dad. We are free." In the days that followed, the atmosphere in Waverly House changed dramatically. The oppressive weight of the curse was lifted and the family began to heal. Rachel's bravery has saved them all, and she was held as a hero. But Rachel knew that the darkness was never truly gone. The grimoire's warnings echoed in her mind, a reminder of the dangers that still lurked in the shadows. She vowed to protect her family and ensured that the past will never repeat itself. As the years passed, Rachel became the guardian of Waverly House, using her knowledge of magic to ward off any threats. She trained Emily and her younger cousins, teaching them the ways of the arcane so they could continue the fight against the darkness. Waverly House, once a place of fear and despair, became a sanctuary of light and hope. The Parker family thrived, no longer bound by the curse that had haunted them for generations. But in the deepest corners of the woods, the shadows still whispered, waiting for the day they could reclaim their hold on the world. And Rachel, ever vigilant, stood ready to protect her family,